We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Hello, hey, welcome to the Mother's Justice Show. My name is Chukundi Salisbury, and you're listening here on KKNW. The Mother's Justice Show is a program of Mothers for Police Accountability, and I'm filling in for the famous and well-known and our benefactor, Reverend Harriet Walden, who cannot be here today. And so today we're going to talk about loss, community accountability, gun violence, and all points in between. I've got an amazing guest in the studio today, and we're here to lift up the voices of families who are demanding, accountability, healing, and change. Today's guest is a mother who has transformed tragedy into advocacy. Her son's story, Justice for Xavier, is sparking an urgent call for accountability and safer communities. Welcome, Lonnisha Landry. How are you today?
Yes, I am good. How are you?
Oh, I'm amazing. Thank you for making the time to come on the Mother's Justice Show today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
All right. So let's get into it. Tell us about your son. Who was he? What made him special? And what do you want people to remember most about him?
Xavier was a 16-year-old son, big brother, friend, cousin, just full of joy, love. I like to say that I lost a son, but I gained plenty of nieces and nephews just from the love of his whole being here. Just his whole life. It's left such a memory, an impactful memory on others.
Yeah, excellent. So obviously he was taken away from us in 2024 through no act of his own, clearly. Can you walk us through the moment that everything changed? Well, I mean, I guess specifically, and I know it's obviously pretty triggering, but I know you've been doing these things in these interviews. When did this happen and where?
Yeah, so on July 12th, in the 10 o'clock hour, Xavier was on A Street in Auburn, Washington, and he was shot 5 times in the chest and twice in the back. I was informed on July 13th around 8 o'clock in the morning by the detectives knocking on my door and showing me pictures of my son. And then they followed up with, he has been a victim of a homicide. And that was the moment my life changed for forever.
So that's kind of how the moment that everything changed. So how did losing him affect you, your family, and your sense of community?
It's affected everything in a huge way, in such a way to where I have now started a nonprofit called Just Us Loved Ones. It is to provide therapeutic services for the siblings of murder victims, as I am a single mother. Xavier was my oldest, and I see that my kids have not only been affected in a deep way, and I see the community is hurting as well. I found myself in a tunnel at one point where it wasn't about if they ate or if they had a safe space to even communicate how they truly felt, because I was such in a tunnel and in a dark space within myself from losing my son. I lost focus on the living. And that's what made me say, hey, I have to do something, because I know that moment, it changes a lot. And that's what gave me the drive to start Just Us Loved Ones.
Yeah, well, just Us Loved Ones. So that's going to be it is a 501c3 nonprofit that folks can support families who are also going through this. One of the things that my mom always talked about was that we needed to reach out to people and just do things. She was very passionate about that. And one of the things she used to say is that folks don't know what they need, right? Because when somebody passes or somebody and murdered in this case, your Facebook is filled with, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need me. But my mom would say, how does a person who's never lost a son, how do they know what they need? Right. And so maybe your nonprofit's going to do some of that work, right, to help those. Yeah, because especially, so there's the one thing in the funeral and these kind of immediate things. What do you need? But then there's what do you need moving forward, right? Like when you say you was in that tunnel. Yeah, there's a lot of people that's gonna cook a plate. They're gonna bring a tray of macaroni and cheese to the repast, and they're gonna be right there. But I guess you're talking about after the repast, the macaroni and cheese is gone, and and now what, right?
Yes. And so I have started an initiative under the nonprofit called Sacred Embrace. And so that covers in the moment. That is something where I would like to be able to reach out to the families within the first 72 hours and just say, hey, you are here, you are seen, you are felt. Even if it's just to send a DoorDash or some flowers, just whatever it can be, something to let them know in that moment when everything dies down and the company leaves and you're not hungry, but the food is sitting, I'm here.
That is great, because that's one of the things that my mom specialized. She would say all the time that, she would just go sit with people, right? Just be present, just to sit. And sometimes that helps, just having somebody there. And she talked about that. One of the things she did was called Virtues Healing. So I think she would be excited that this work, the work of sitting with folks who've lost, and honoring those rights, honoring their feelings, right? Because we don't talk enough about the victims, right? Everybody's into criminal justice, and we most certainly want justice, but there's no justice for the victims and the folks that are left behind. Wow, so that's interesting. So obviously you've channeled this unimaginable pain into purpose, specifically by launching the nonprofit and these initiatives. And you talked a little bit about what inspired you to do that, right? Because you were in the tunnel. I heard you. And that's great. Can you talk a little bit about, I know that have you kind of moved on from the piece around holding parents accountable for some of the guns that are available and maybe into more of this healing space? Or is that also an initiative that you're working on? Because I know that you had a change.org petition last year, and you really kind of posed that question to community. Who's responsible if somebody leaves your gun unlocked and your kid takes your gun and goes and kills somebody else's son? Is there any accountability for those parents? And we saw where in Michigan that actually happened. There was a case where some parents were held accountable. So where are you on that body of work now? And where do you stand on those that part of your what you had like going on last year?
Yes. I have a strong, firm stance on that. Like, I really believe that is something that should happen. I haven't pushed it as much as I have been a little geared more about just trying to heal. Not saying that that isn't important, because that is a huge part of my fight, as well as I have been collaborating with the parents of Jada. She lost her life in Alderwood Mall. She was 15 years old, and they have an initiative out that they are trying to have people sign as well. And it's for stricter laws on the juveniles. So ours kind of went side by side, where yes, I want accountability to go towards the parents when they have modified weapons. Not saying any weapon is okay, but for these long extended clips that we're seeing these kids have and come in and out the house with, that's not okay. So that's where I'm standing strong and saying, if you know your child is changing out their gun and, oh, this one looks better with this outfit and doing things of this nature, you need to be held accountable instead of just making it an accessory, because that's not nothing that just goes with your outfits. That needs to be stopped. That is killing other people's kids. And some of these mothers and fathers, they know that this is going on. And those are the ones that they need to be held accountable.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. No, I completely agree with that. One of the things we've talked about with accountability and parents is how can parents reach out, right? I mean, and it just doesn't seem to be a lot of support for a parent who does know that their child is involved in something. Who do they call? Right? Do they call the detective? Because that's a whole leap. It kind of seems like there ought to be something in between, right? Because I think some parents they know their kid got a gun, but then they know that, okay, well, if I call the police might kill my son, right? And so that's like a valid thing too. And it just kind of seems like there ought to be something in the middle where they can, do something. I don't have the answers, but I'm glad to know that you're continuing this kind of conversation in community around that. So specifically around the healing and your nonprofit, right? I know there's a lot of people doing that, and there's a great need for it, and that's good, right? I think how are you distinguishing what you do versus some of these other, you've got healing circles, there's just a lot of things going on. So what are some of the strategies you're using to work and get the word out around what you're trying to do with families?
So one of the strategies I have taken, it is to join a board of mothers. So it is built up of 4 mothers. It is called Echoes of Our Children. We're a coalition that is all coming together, organized to dedicating and preserving the legacy of our loved ones due to loss of gun violence, uplifting grieving families, and demanding accountability and leadership. So with this coalition, I decided to team up with mothers that have lost their children years before mine was taken from me. And I just feel like these are mothers where they have very impactful stories, where they have been hurt behind the scenes, but publicly shamed or publicly humiliated for acting out. But it's a lot that comes with this. Like, once you make it here in this club where you've lost your child, you depend on different agencies to wrap their arms around you and support you and uplift you. And then you go to these agencies and they abuse you and they use your story. And so where is the safe space? We want to be able to create that for people. And so that is my strategy for teaming up and saying, you know what, this is bigger than me. It's going to take more than me.
Right. Now, what's the name of you say it's Echoes of
Our Children.
Wow, I mean, my mom would love that, right? Because that's really how we started Mothers for Police Accountability. My brothers were beat up by the police, and this is over 30 years ago. And my mother's been working with coalitions of mothers. So it's unfortunate that we need to have that, but it is a great thing that people are able to coalesce. And we'll have to bring y'all all back on the show at some point to tap in with just that piece around Black women or mothers in particular just coming together to be able to work. You're listening to the Mother's Justice Show here on KKNW. My name is Chukundi Salisbury, and I'm filling in for the incomparable Reverend Harriet Walden, who is the leader of our band. She's not able to host the show today, so I'm filling in as your new host. And so we've got something that is right up her lane. We're talking with Lonnisha Landry, who is fighting for justice for her son, Xavier, who was murdered in 2024. She's formed an organization, a coalition of mothers who are working to keep the names and the essence of their children alive, while also providing vital services for other victims and families of violence. So, Lonnisha, let's pick it back up where we left on the break. You've got the team together, and you guys have the nonprofit, and you're actively trying to reach out to folks and families and provide that support and that healing after their child has been or sibling, if you will, has been taken away. So how's all that going so far?
It's going well. It's going well. So I can say right now we are just building connections. So a lot of things are happening behind the scenes just for us to pave the way and have boots on the ground when it's time.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. So, and what's the name of your the nonprofit again?
The coalition is Echoes of Our Children.
Yeah, and then you specifically in the last segment talked about your you formed a nonprofit as well. Is
Yes,
that the
and my
nonprofit?
nonprofit,
Okay.
it is called Just Us Loved Ones, and an initiative under the nonprofit is Sacred Embrace.
Okay, yeah, Sacred Embrace. There you go. Wow, so let's go into prevention, right? I mean, I know that I saw on your Facebook you said, hey, nobody should have to go through this again. How can we obviously you're working on healing, which is important, right? But what about prevention and change? I noticed that you've been, very active in community, and especially with this being election season and politicians out here and some running, some not. If you had 60 seconds to meet with some of the Seattle and perhaps Auburn and just local leaders, what would you tell them that needs to change immediately to save lives?
Awareness, really awareness in every realm. So right now there's a study out where Washington State University did a study and it came back that the number one cause of high school deaths is by gun violence. That's a problem. This is something that we all need to be trying to get ahead of because like I've been saying since the beginning of my journey, I don't want other mothers to feel like me. When I got here, I was one that thought I would never be here. I thought I did stuff right. My parents are hands-on with my kids. I'm hands-on. So I thought the love would protect them from the evilness of the world, and it was not enough. So now, one of my things that I have going is the call to action because something that I think just happens with call to action is for the community. And one of the things that I thought happens automatically with a murder is advanced DNA testing. I did not know that this was something that would have to go to the Attorney General's office and they would be able to kick it back and say, hey, there's no funds there for that. And I'm thinking, what? First 48, I watch it all the time. It seems like stuff just happens and they're able to get the bad guy. And in this case, it's been over a year and a half. The bad guy is not caught. And one of the delays are advanced DNA testing on the gun shells that were left at my son's body. So when I say awareness would be letting families know that what you think comes with a murder case does not just automatically come with a murder case. If you don't have money to pay out of pocket, you will be asking for the community's assistance to solve your baby's murder. So let's try to prevent it before it gets here.
Right. So that's one of the things we can do is awareness. One of the things that really hit around your son's murder, because I had heard, I'm in community, I hear a lot of things, and that's what people were saying about your son was that he was a really good guy. Like, and I know that, we kind of hear that about a lot of people, right? First of all, nobody deserves to die. But sometimes you have some young people that have really been out here riding and doing all of that, and then the gun comes back on them. With your son, I heard he was in the band or wasn't he in the what's
Yes,
his
he
name?
played
Yeah,
the bass drum. Yep,
yeah,
for the
yeah.
dolls and
Yeah, the
gents.
gents
Yep.
and the dolls. Those are my people. I don't know if you saw on another note. I don't know if you saw my petition about that last year. I had to go in on Seafair about vilifying my gents and my dolls. Around that's a whole other
And that
topic.
was with Xavier's story.
I
That
know,
was
but
connected. That's why it's
that's
like,
how I
yikes.
found out about Xavier and how it could. But and I'm gonna just keep it real with you. I don't, I'm not being disrespectful or anything, but I hear about a lot of things, right? And people say, well, can you help us? And Jamila and them guys called me late that because basically Seafair tried to cancel them out of the parade and they waited to the last minute, like the Thursday night. And then they thought it was just going to go away. And somebody hit me early in the morning on Friday morning. And I made the petition and they were like, no, this is not true. And Xavier was a good kid. And I was kind of like, sometimes people tell me that they was a good kid. And then I find out later that he had a lot of stuff going on. But this particular young man was in the Gents and the Dolls, and they said that he would be up with his grandparents in Skyway, and he just had a lot of good stuff going on. And that's what made me say, okay, I'm gonna get behind this. And we had almost 3,000 signatures in a few hours to let the Dolls play. And so eventually they were not in the parade that year. But most certainly the mayor called them, and Seafair had to issue a statement. They thought that they was just going to use, probably your son's image too, because he was in all them pictures and stuff. And so we really tried to hold them accountable. But I guess I'm saying all of that story to let you know that the word was out that Xavier was a good kid. So I know that, I don't know. I mean, obviously you knew that, right? And most certainly the Dolls and Mark and keep saying all them guys know that. But it was important to me that community knows that about your son. And so I just wanted to tell you that. I mean, since it came, I just remembered, about that. So yeah, awareness about that. One of the things we say with 100 Black parents is that there is no such thing as somebody else's child, because you could do all, and in your case, right, and in a lot of these cases, we've raised our community. I say we, but these parents have raised excellent children, and they're just trying to do the right thing, or just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's somebody else's child, if you will, that is engaged in that. And like with the shooting up at Garfield, also last summer with Amar, right, with a young man,
Yes.
a football player. I knew his grandfather. He came to camp with us at the African American Males Weekend when he was a child. And he was just out there breaking up a fight, like trying to have peace on campus, and was gunned down as well. So, speaking of that, what are your thoughts around, these community cameras and the like?
Yeah. It gets me because for me, like I said, I'm all about prevention.
Yeah.
I would rather get ahead of it before we have to just try to figure it out after it's done. And so when I seen that Garfield went against the police in the school, I was just like, yikes. Because when Amar lost his life, that was on my birthday. That was on my 40th birthday. So that's the day that I will never forget. Not only because it's my birthday, but because a family lost their son a month and a couple of days right before I lost mine. And it happened at school where you think your child is safe. You did the right thing. There was nothing that you've done wrong, and you still have to be here in the seat with me having to figure it out after. And then you think the community would do the right thing, because maybe if they had that cop in the school, then it wouldn't have happened right outside the school, because everybody would have been in the known that, no, we're not going there playing around, So it's just heartbreaking how you would think that the community would back you on certain things, or would just back the matter, and they don't stand up when you need them to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of doing everything right, I'm sure there's another parent right now who, has got their grandparents involved, like you have with Xavier's grandparents, and in amazing activities. I mean, the Dolls and Gents is one of the best activities you could be involved in. Mar was in football and all these different things, right? And yet and still these things happen, right? So if there's another parent that's kind of scared or struggling to keep their kids safe, what would you want them to hear from you right now as a person who's been on this journey? You've got the echoes of the voice with your women, yeah, in the group. So what is your message to these parents that are just still struggling? They're trying to do the right thing, and there's a lot of fear with parents right now on how to keep their children safe.
Yes. And so my message would just be, if your child is already gone, reach out to me, reach out to somebody that's in the situation, that understands the situation. Because when I got here, there were mothers that from all over that reached out to me and that took me. And I met one in Tacoma, and one, they both lost their children in Tacoma, but they were in two different cities, and they reached out to me. One started a car club in honor of her son, and she's really like one that taps in
Right.
and communicates and supports me, and I try to support them as much as I can as well. So the support is out there, but what I'm personally doing to try to make it known and have an office, like a safe space, is
Right.
I'm one that went and spoke for the crisis center. I feel
Right.
like the crisis center is something that can help us all. So it can help those mothers that are saying, hey, my son's getting off the hook. Like, I want this. This
Yeah.
is a behavior health type of thing. I want all of this to fall under that one umbrella. So let's not just work
Instead
on
of just calling in the
mental health.
police pull up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
know
Like,
what?
yeah,
I
let's
see.
have a foundation. I'm pushing for that to go into the crisis center. So when I spoke at the King County Council meeting, I was speaking on behalf of that. Yes, I want the funds to be there. Yes, I want the building to be right there, because I wanted to have a safe home. I wanted to fit every agenda when it says behavior health, not just one.
Right. Well, you know what? That's so good. So, you know what? I appreciate you coming on the Mother's Justice Show today and spending your time with us. Can you kind of run down how people can get involved with your organizations and just run those names down again in a link that I can share with the community?
Yes, yes. So I will provide the links. One email is justusloveones@gmail.com. You can always email there. I will read everything. I will make sure that any resources I have, I personally provide to you as well. If you are a mother in need, a father in need, a brother in need, whatever your need may be, I can personally say that I will be there to try to help and do my best to provide the services that I have reached at
That,
Gravid.
that's excellent. So, again, thank you, Lonnisha Landry, and we most certainly want to see justice for Xavier. And that's not over, even though she mentioned she's working on trying to connect community with healing services. We still want to know about the DNA on those gun casings. So, again, this is Chukundi Salisbury on the Mother's Justice Show on KKNW. Thank you for listening, and we'll be right back.
When our children aren't safe, none of us can rest. Mothers for Police Accountability has been standing on the front lines for decades, demanding justice, truth, and transparency in Seattle. But we can't do it alone. We need you, parents, students, neighbors, to join us. Volunteer, speak up, be part of the movement that keeps our communities safe and our voices heard. Visit mothersforpoliceaccountability.org. That's mothersforpoliceaccountability.org. And stand with the mothers who never stop fighting for what's right. Mothers for Police Accountability. Love in action for justice. Looking for media that truly represents us? Converge Media is where culture meets truth. Seattle's leading Black-owned media network, bringing you powerful stories, local news, and conversations that matter. From the morning update show to groundbreaking community coverage, Converge shines a light on the voices that shape our city, our leaders, our artists, our families. Stay informed, stay inspired, stay connected at whereweconverge.com. That's whereweconverge.com. Converge Media, telling our stories, our way.
Hey y'all, it's time we take care of what's ours. The Black Legacy Homeowners Hub is now open at the McKinney Center, a safe space to learn, connect, and protect our family homes. Whether you're fixing up your house, passing it down, or just trying to hold on, we've got real people, real help, and real answers waiting for you. So come on by. Drop in between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the McKinney Center on 21st and Jackson. Let's keep our legacy strong, together.
Okay. Hey, welcome back from the break. Again, you're listening to the Mother's Justice Show here on KKNW. And this is the voice for community accountability, healing, and action. My name is Chukundi Salisbury, and I'm filling in for Reverend Harriet Walden, who's not able to be on the show today. Let's get into it. That was a great segment. We talked previously about healing, and I just want to get into some of the news and updates around police accountability locally that's been happening. in the past few weeks, there's been a lot going on, officer-involved shootings, policy changes, big shifts in how communities are holding police accountable, right? And let's start here at home. I talked about this a few weeks ago, but it's still huge that, after 13 years under federal oversight, Seattle's police department has officially exited its consent decree. The agreement had required that, we had outside monitoring of use of force tactics, bias, and crisis response. Federal officials have said that the city's made enough progress to stand on its own. But we know that there's many folks that are not celebrating just yet. Me personally here at Mother's Justice Show are looking at it with an eye of cautious optimism. We know that, Reverend Walden was one of the key people involved with bringing the consent decree to the city of Seattle. So just channeling her right now, she most certainly would be in a wait and see mode, is definitely not celebrating. Because, without federal oversight, local, hopefully local bodies like, the Office of Police Accountability and the CPC can carry even more weight, even though we don't hear as much from them. So the real question, will they have the resources and the independence to keep reform alive right now that the weight of the consent decree is not over the department? I think I talked about it before where, I think it's a good thing personally for the new police chief, still in his first year, Sean Barnes, to be able to move forward without that over his head so he can try to have some success here in Seattle. But again, channeling Reverend Walden, the jury is still out. We still have many years to go to really see if we can move forward as a city without the consent decree. What's next here on my list? On the state level, there's a concern at the state level that I'm hearing. The Office of Independent Investigations, which was created to handle police-involved deaths, has had its funding cut by more than 20%. Folks are warning that this could slow down investigations, weaken transparency, especially in smaller and rural departments that already, lack oversight capacity. And this, comes down to, just customer service sometimes where folks want to get answers and cannot get calls. So that's going to be something that we'll keep an eye on over at the state level. The Office of Independent Investigations and that budget being cut by more than 20%. So keep your eye on that. Another thing that came up when I was doing some research for the show this week, in a small Washington County, a sheriff candidate is facing allegations of domestic violence and dishonesty, yet still remains eligible to run. That story highlighted a deeper problem in Washington. And I think we saw that in Tacoma and other places where, sheriffs don't need to have prior police training to be elected. And you would think that you probably should have been an officer before you become the sheriff, right? So, that's something that probably should be reflected upon. That means voters could be putting somebody in charge of their department without even knowing if they're fit to serve, right? So, on a positive note this month, in the transparency front, all Washington police agencies must now report use of force data monthly to a new public database. I think I talked about this a few months ago, which is great. So that is a win for transparency. We know that, men lie, women lie, but the numbers don't. That's what they say, right? But only if the state, audits this data and ensures it's complete, and then actually uses it to inform policy. I think we've all seen where, folks have that. We have the data, we just haven't looked at it. We have policy that we say is going to be data informed, but oftentimes it's not. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on locally, regionally. Looking around the West Coast around police accountability issues. The West Coast is always and still will be seen as reform leaders, but and around police accountability, but challenges always persist. I was looking at some news out of California, in Hayward, California. An officer involved shooting earlier this month is under investigation after police say a suspect pointed a gun during a stop. Right in Oregon, we know that Oregon is going through it right now with the the administration and trying to bring in the National Guard, right? And so we're really folks are trying to rebuild trust after years of protest there, and the National Guard is not going to help that most likely. But one of the things that's still an issue in Portland is the use of force and crowd control policies that we all saw previously. Um, the the other thing that's continues to be huge is the police unions obviously remain powerful players, often pushing back against the contract changes that would make it easier to discipline officers. Yet, reformers, we're still calling for those contracts to have, balance and fairness. So, just across the West Coast, we most certainly love the fact that we are these union states and most certainly labor friendly. However, the downside of that, especially when it comes to police accountability, is that, police unions police are union too. And so that's always going to be a tenuous situation. So, moving forward, some of the things going on nationally that I saw when I was doing some research here for the show is in September, 3 police officers were shot and killed while serving a warrant. Right. And I think that it's important. If my mother was here, if Reverend Harriet Walden was here on the show, she most certainly would feel some kind of way, because the loss of any life is a terrible thing. And we most certainly know a lot of great police officers, and anyone that is killed during the course of duty, it most certainly is a tragedy. And so that happened in York County in Pennsylvania last month, where 3 officers were shot and killed while serving a warrant. And, we just want to send some thoughts to their families. At the same time, each incident raises the question about tactics, risk management, and training, especially around these kinds of high stake warrants services, with the ability to, to track people and all of the things that they have, all of the tools that they have at their disposal. It kind of wonders, why do we serve these kinds of warrants in the first place at this point? I know that out in Washington, D.C., federal agents and D.C. police shot and killed a man in a murder case in Columbia Heights. Authorities say that the man, the classic, he pointed a gun at officers, but advocates over there are still looking for the body camera footage to be released quickly and transparency. And that was just last week in Washington, D.C., in the Columbia Heights area. So, I think, one of the things I wanted to do while I'm doing the show is highlight just how nationally, we've still got a long ways to go for around police accountability. And in the last segment, we talked a little bit about, community accountability. It's going to take a balance of both for us to have communities that are safe and thriving, and ability to, for people to live their best life. So, big picture, across the country, there's a growing concern that federal oversight decree tools, like the consent decrees, are being rolled back under the current Justice Department. I mean, we have a president who has said, he'd like to see the full force of the Army, let alone the police, coming into our communities. We saw, Black Hawk helicopters in Chicago a couple weeks ago. So it's fair to say that the era of the federal government helping to keep our local police agencies accountable is most likely coming to an end, right? So it's going to be up to us to be able to work cooperatively with our local agencies to ensure good customer service, of course, and getting community policing, but also that high level of accountability that Reverend Walden and others most certainly worked on for years here in the Seattle area and nationally. So this policy shift is really threatening years of progress, right? So the other thing that I saw when I was looking at this piece was the national misconduct tracking system, right? That we had one that was meant to prevent bad officers from quickly transferring to new departments has been effectively shut down, reducing transparency, right? And on the research front, AI tools that analyze police body camera footage for signs of escalation or bias. These tools, it's important for us to keep an eye on these tools, right? Because we know that often, AI is really just learning from the entire internet. And if the entire internet continues to paint all Black people or all people of color as bad, then AI is learning that as well. So while AI is most certainly good for many things, it's important for us to keep an eye on those things. Lastly, in this segment, I just wanted to talk about some of the policy updates in this last minute I have here in this segment. I talked about this before. The use of force database, which launched, is great. It's requiring all agencies to update that incidents regularly. So we most certainly want to keep an eye out for that. Again, the budget cuts at the OII, which is the Office of Independent Investigations. We need to keep an eye on that. Of course, we need to keep an eye on police contracts and understand that oftentimes our elected officials and even the high level leaders in these departments have their hands tied because of the items in the contract. So it's really important. And I talked about this when I ran for office. The contract is what's most important, in my opinion, around police accountability. So, those are some of the updates around police accountability. And this is the Mother's Justice Show. My name is Chukundi Salisbury. In this last segment of the hour, I just want to really zero in on Seattle. Once again, if you're just joining us, I'm filling in for the Reverend Harriet Walden, who's not able to host the show today. And for full transparency, I am her son, Chukundi Salisbury Sr. All right, so let's get into it. We got a few minutes left here, and I really want to talk a little bit about Seattle and some of the things that the streets are talking about right now, at least in my community and the folks I interact with. Where surveillance, school policy, civic power and debates, safety, oversight. Let's get into it. So you'll start with the city with the new real-time crime cameras pilot, right? And the politics about privacy it raises. But and then we'll talk about the decision about the school board to reject reintroducing an officer at Garfield. That was huge. And then, of course, as a person that ran for office and understands why how some of these politics works. I mean, politics are crazy, and nobody truly knows how they all work. But voting most certainly matters, right? So let's get into it. So as you know, I think a lot of people already know this, but Seattle's launched a real-time crime center. It's called the RTCC, and it's part of a crime prevention technology pilot. In just a couple of months, the city officials have said the RTCC has already supported 600 incidents and aided in 90 ongoing investigations, right? So how does it work? Analysts in the real-time crime center monitor live feeds, right? So they're watching the CCTVs and data services, and then they can push those images or info into officers in the field, right? And currently, the network is on corridors like the track, as we like to call it, Aurora Avenue North, downtown 3rd Avenue, and in the CID, China International District. And to expand the pilot, the council recently passed 2 ordinances, authorizing placements in Capitol Hill, the Stadium District, and around Garfield High School. Those ordinances, allow the RTCC staff to access the traffic cameras that SDOT already has, right? So Seattle, and SDOT is the Seattle Department of Transportation in select locations, because I think that, oftentimes I know sometimes people think that there's, this data sharing and conspiracy, but in our city, it seems like, just because the city on the one hand owns these traffic cameras from SDOT doesn't mean that the police department, which is also the city, can just march into SDOT and take over the cameras, right? So this had a heated debate. And as usual, in my opinion, the people who are impacted the most weren't necessarily at the table, right? There was a huge city council meeting. I watched some of the film. I only saw one Black person, and most certainly only a couple of people speaking in favor of the cameras, when it's mostly Black people that are murdered, right? So that's a whole different piece. But so of course the council was heated. Many civil liberty groups. Most certainly, I know that Reverend Walden hates being tracked. The government, watching her. She most certainly doesn't like that. It never did. However, we have to kind of weigh public safety as well, right? So everybody's worried about privacy, data abuse, and overreach, and we most certainly know those things happen. And council member Mercedes Rink asked in that debate, why expand when we haven't evaluated the data from the pilot? And of course, my personal response to something like that would be because our kids are dying and they're running around with guns, and we need to find out. We need the cameras to be able to track, okay, if they shot here and then they shot over there and it's the same car. But again, I think I hear the other side of the argument, right? But I guess I would just say that most certainly it's something that some people like myself feel like we need. But, we're here to make sure we talk about all sides of the issue. Of course, others express worries that the surveillance would disproportionately target marginalized communities or be leveraged by federal entities. And I don't see how that would happen, most certainly, because if our police department can't even get the footage from the guys down the hall, right, at SDOT can't give the footage to SPD, what makes people think that the federal government's going to get SDOT's footage? Right. But all of this stuff, I mean, to tell the truth, who knows, right? Because, we have the ability with the NSA. You see these movies, they can crack into anything. So anything's possible. I'm not writing it off. I'm just kind of pointing it out that most certainly it doesn't seem like the federal government could get to that data. But, I think, everybody should have their opinion. Right. And in response to these concerns, they cap the retention to 5 days unless it's needed for investigations, right? And and so that means they'll only keep the footage, right? But in my opinion, that we'll see how that goes. I mean, how many times have they found a body? And it's 6 days. So now what? The footage is gone because we were so worried about federal overreach that we deleted the footage. So we'll see. But that's most certainly something that's really going on, and we got to keep an eye on and really see if in fact it's something that's working or not, or maybe it just makes people feel better. Hey, so switching gears, the Seattle School Board just voted 5-2 against reinstating the school resource officer at Garfield High School. Now, this is big news. We know that Amar was murdered right outside of Garfield, and we still don't know who did it. And some people feel, I mean, obviously I'm one of them. I went to Garfield for full transparency, and I knew most of the school resource officers that had served over the last, 25 years as a person. I was the DJ, so I'm in a different place. I most certainly think that we can have officers in schools. However, the school board voted against it. And I talked in, I'm actually going to bring somebody back on the show here that can give us a little more insight. What I heard, right, and I'm not one to traffic and, unsubstantiated things, but they said that the agreement that the community had come together and looked at earlier this summer had changed substantially. And some of the guardrails that we had talked about and having in that agreement were not in the final piece that the school board was looking at voting on, and therefore they voted it down. But just for context, for folks that maybe are not aware of the situation, Seattle Public Schools for many years, as I mentioned, had school resource officers. But in the 2020, in the wake of George Floyd, we rethought that and we banned them, right? And so this proposal was to bring back an armed officer at Garfield, really in response, to Amar Murphy Payne, who was shot and killed in the parking lot. But again, this is a deep debate, right? Because you actually have some students that say, well, why are there any guns in the building? Right. And so, students, parents, and some educators opposed the pilot. Right. And again, when I say that, that's the people who actually showed up to testify. That's not necessarily the streets, because I talked to a lot of parents and they most certainly would love to have the school resource officer back in the building. So, I think that it's important for us to be civically engaged, right? Regardless of where you're at on these pieces, it's clear that in the end, civic engagement is needed. We need people to show up if that's how you really feel. So anyway, that was a big deal. The school boards, even though we've been talking about this proposal for a minute, there was a meeting this summer. We met with the chief, and I was there. The school boards voting against the proposal emphasized that the proposal felt rushed, right, and didn't assure meaningful community input or accountability structures, which is, like I said, what I heard is the agreement was different than what we had talked about in the summer. So when I get a chance, I'm going to reach out to SPD and maybe ask and just say, well, was there some type of bait and switch? Because we most certainly had an agreement that looked good to me. But again, I don't have a child in the building. But I guess, what I would say is, how many kids have to die, right? And folks keep saying, we need more community-based solutions. Well, what are those, right? I mean, even my people that work at community passageways, they've said, hey, well, somebody got the pistol and they're committed, what do we do? Right? It's one thing. Yeah, I think community-based solutions are most certainly effective at many of the young people who are on the edge, right, where they're about to get into the car with these, bad guys or what have you, or they're thinking about bringing a gun, or they might be just really mad, and you could talk them off the ledge, the OG, if you will, right? But what happens to those young people that are just very committed, and they say, hey, you know what? When I see him, it's on sight, and I'm gonna kill him. What happens to that? What's the community-based, approach to somebody that really says that and means it, and they're coming with the gun? So, it's just something that, I would have said if I was at the school board. But again, I was working and wasn't there. But it's just something to think about. So we'll see how this progresses, and I just hope that nobody else has to die up at Garfield. That being said, I am going to reach out to Apollonia and those guys. They've got the central area public safety. They've started that back up, and very interested to see what they think about this proposal and it getting voted down. So yeah, we'll look into that. So yeah, moving on, I wanted to also just talk about civic power, right? So this is super important right now. Excuse me. As we move into this election season, I just wanted to take a minute and remind everybody that voting matters. Okay, if you know me, if you remember me, I ran for state representative. I ran to be a state representative in the 37th district in 2020. While I was unsuccessful in that, my bid, I made it to the general election, and so most certainly I've walked the walk, if you will. So it's very important. Not only now we see, I think the whole country sees that most certainly federal elections do matter, but local elections, school boards, municipal debates, all of these things matter. And we just really can't afford to skip or underestimate this local vote. So even though it's not a national election, we need everybody to vote. Okay? So I'm going to end it there. My name is Chukundi Salisbury Sr., and you've been listening to the Mother's Justice Show. Make sure you follow us on socials at Mothers for Police Accountability, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, how can you rest? You believe in freedom, cannot rest.